But oftentimes I think that it's also because there is this disconnect of already seeing punk culture and Black thing. We have to really understand proto-punk culture. My godmother told me that sometimes the best revenge is actually crying over the things that people have done to you, letting it out. Like that is some of the sweetest revenge. You can sit there and relate to your body, say this thing has happened to me. So then you don't have to be a victim. You get to move on.
Welcome to another episode of The Dugout. This interview, I've spent a lot of time editing, and it's wild to have worked on this podcast so much and to be able to confidently say, this is one of my top 5 episodes of the podcast so far. It's an interview with a really, really amazing person, ASL Princess, an artist, community organizer, and founding member of Class War Collective. I think this interview feels a lot like you just getting to sit down with us and hear Black, queer, trans folks talk, share the tea, gap about existentialism, so many different things. And it feels like a hug. Like I listen to this and I'm like, oh my God, I have people. We have people. Buckle up. This is going to be a long interview. I'm also felt really inspired while editing this, and there's going to be one or two movie clips interspersed that I feel like really highlight what is being talked about in that section. And it's just kind of the way that I relate to how I'm exploring media and radicalism right now. So just expect that. And to dig into a little bit about this episode, what does it mean to wield anger as a tool for survival and liberation? How do we move beyond proving our existence and instead build power on our own terms? In this episode, we sit down with ASL Princess, an artist, community organizer, and founding member of Class War Collective, among many other things, including being an amazing DJ and musician, just fucking amazing. If they're in your city, go and see them. We sit down with her to talk about the necessity of being antagonistic to trans misogynoir, the radical act of community building, and why love, when freed from the state's grip and violence, becomes an act of resistance. ASL Princess takes us through her journey growing up in a politically complex household, learning to embrace the power of queer and Black and trans rage, and refusing to engage with bigots on the terms of fascists and bigots. And we discuss how the state's definitions trap us in a colonial idea of identity, love, spirituality, desire, and so much more, and what it takes to decolonize the way that we relate to each other. ASL Princess also breaks down the work of Class War Collective in Central Ohio, creating an alternative economy and space for artists. This conversation is so necessary right now and so centering and so unapologetically Black and trans. And now I ask you, how can we channel our rage into community and care and resistance? And what does it mean to show up for our past and future selves in the fight for liberation? And what does it mean to love the Black trans women in our lives? Now, on to the interview. We have our guest. So thank you for being here.
Hi, everyone. No, this is dope. We've spoken about doing this for quite a while, and I'm glad it's actually happened. You know what, though? Like, I had been wondering for so long, like, what was I gonna say? Like, what's gonna be in my heart the day of when it just comes up and, like, we set the date to actually be here? And then last night, I woke up at 4 a.m. with thoughts, and then I woke up again this morning at 7, and I just started writing. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. So no, I'm thankful. I'm grateful. I appreciate this. This is going to be fun. Anarchy. What?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you are technically the first interview for the Dugout, pre-Dugout, and never published. Because I interviewed you at like a party before we published anything for like 20 minutes, just chilling on the floor. And here we are a year and some change later.
Oh my God.
One of the first questions I like to ask is, what was young you like? Where did you grow up? What were you like when you were younger?
Ooh, young Moya was very adventurous, Young Moya was like the black sheep of her family. Um, but young Moya was also like cultivated through like love, molded with like love. My mom and I are very close. We're like the ghetto Gilmore Girls. Yeah, my mom and I are really close. I told my mom everything. I remember the first day I discovered an ingrown pubic hair and I thought it was an STD. I ran out of the shower butt naked into my mom's room right before she was going to work. She was like putting on makeup and I was like, Mom, what is this? And she was like, Baby, that's just an ingrown hair. She was like, You been fucking though?
Wow.
And I'm like, no, not like the real stuff, just like, like the heavy plating stuff. But yeah, but you know what I mean? So it was just like, I don't know. My mom and I are super close. But, young me came from a family of artists, a family of music heads, um, a family of mostly men. I've had to like really deal with like this hierarchy and patriarchy for a long time. Like my dad was in like military, like FBI. He worked in the FBI building. Like he's been all about like servicing civic service. So, having to also find ways to escape out of that, having to hear words like negative when I ask for things. Yeah, I've found escape for that at a really young age. I mean, I joined like all the other like weirdo kids in middle school, like the skater dudes, the people who would draw like Spitfire logos on their like binders and draw Hello Kitty the best way they could. Like I'm one of those girls who would then also go to like those Peabody clubs at 14 and 15 and like yeah, it was like these clubs that were like 13 and up, like 13 to 18.
Oh yeah, I remember those.
Yeah. And you would go and they would like shut down at around like 11:30. And yeah, you would have like a guardian or someone come sign to pick you up or whatever. But I would just go with friends and their auntie, like they would be my auntie or whatever type shit. So yeah, I grew up in a lot of like subculture spaces and needed that because that was oftentimes my place of refuge. So even in today, like I take that very seriously, like the spaces that I show up and try to cultivate and or curate and condition, with other people who I know who are doing things in the streets too. It's like, those are my places of refuge. And I think like it's, it's part of the emergent care and I can bring that up later. But I think that is something that has kind of like been through me as a process since I was young because I was like this black queer alternative, like person who found like black queer alternative kids and brown folks and Latinos and Latinx, it was really cool. And we would just like hang by the beach. I was in like the East Coast in Virginia, but moved around a lot. Yeah, I have family in New York. I have family in like Atlanta, all throughout DC, the East Coast, and three of the seven cities in Virginia. Um, so yeah, I relatively moved around a lot. So it's sometimes when people are like, "Where are you from?" I give them this whole story. Yeah, because I never really like grew up from like one place. And then even when I spent time in Columbus, I traveled often. Then had like got worked with Cirque du Soleil. So I traveled with Cirque du Soleil for almost 5 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I
And
did the light art, like tech and VIP specialties for Cirque. And
okay.
I traveled the world with them for those 5 years. And my room in the house that I was living at was just like a suitcase. I would only be home like maybe
Wow.
2 weeks out of the year.
Okay.
So it wasn't until probably around the time that I met you was when I became like solidified as like an Ohioan.
Okay.
Because even though I had been on my own since 16, when my mom left, I hung out with a friend here and just like went to school, came
Mhm.
home, then went to college, flunked out of college, and then was able to work with Cirque du Soleil through the community that I built here in
Okay.
Columbus.
Wow. Okay. Do you feel like when you were younger and you were finding all these alternative spaces, what were you looking for?
I was looking for a place to be Moya. If I could say respectfully, a black tranny. I was looking for that. I was looking for a space where I could come in and be like, whoa. And like, I would be celebrated for being different, you know? And my best friends, like, when I recently went home to Virginia, like, I linked up with my friend Alexa, shout out to Alexis, who was like, you're just a big girl. Like, she was the one who clocked me. And I'm, you know, I mean, it was clockable, but that was the first person to be like, wait, you know, to tell me, you know, to affirm it. So yeah, that was definitely something I was looking for. I was looking for this thing of like, I was looking for knowledge, right? And I think I was always going to have it because my dad, though he wanted to perform these civic duties, was very into like anti-establishments, actually. Was really into like Bob Marley, the Wailers, like raised me on art that would like soon connect me to like revolutionaries, you know, telling me about like Maya Angelou, Angela Davis. Like he was, so it's kind of weird. It's like, I'm not ACAB for life and it's real, but he was one of the like gateways to that. And then my uncle on his side of the family was a DJ, was a jock, yeah, and like true to it. Like your room, the dining room would be full of records. You wouldn't be able to walk through the house, like records. So it was like getting to grow up in all this culture and knowledge was really cool, but it wasn't a thing that was practiced because I think my family got wrapped up in having to like pay bills and work. And then my mom, you know, she did become a nurse, but and through that had a hard time because then it was like my dad would have to take more care of us. You know, my dad would have to put more emotion and logic into raising us outside of just providing bread and butter and my favorite oatmeal pies. You know what I'm saying? Like it was, you know, so I also got to see that, which then when my parents split up, it was like to see my mom be a single mother on top of all the things, you know, it was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And I think that's how me and my mom got closer because we needed each other. You know, we are like sisters, but like I know better, you know? So yeah, I don't know if I answered the question.
Yeah. No, it did. And I think I kind of asked that because I do think growing up with your father around and that influence, I do see Black people as a lot of Black people could hold that duality, or like there's that possibility, or there's that space that becomes possible because they want to make it possible. So I feel like that's real. And then also, like, I was just curious because I feel like it's something we've talked a lot about on the podcast, like finding alternatives through punk spaces or punk music, or I don't know, skaters, or just like alt culture, like spaces where I don't know, like I think Black people kind of have to go sometimes as like a gateway or something. I don't know.
But oftentimes I think that it's also because there is this disconnect of already seeing punk culture in Black things, right? Like we have to really understand proto-punk culture and then what punk culture actually comes from and what it stems from, you know? Like I went to go see the Afropunk movie here with some friends of mine and met up with James Spooner, who was the person who produced and filmed the documentary. And I asked him, I was like, well, where do you think Afropessimism shows in your art? Like, where do you think you see this true rage and revolt that comes from Blackness, not from an energy that you were used to seeing and this just like, I'm going to obtain knowledge through a sense of self and anti-establishment, right? Like, outside of only seeing community as a form of, I hate to say it, as capitalism, how do you see
as
a commodity, right? How do you see Afropessimism showing up in your work? And he said, I don't know what that is. And I gagged. Like Hana gagged.
What do you think that? And I guess it's like, are you kind of speaking to the fact that like Black people participate, but we don't have like, I don't know, I guess like a more updated logic around it, or an updated, or like what do you feel like you got from that?
Well, because let's use hip hop as an example and communities that are around hip hop, and also let's talk about gang culture. I am very pro gang culture, right? That is very punk to me. You can go to the hood right now that is quickly being gentrified and see the effects of these kids who are listening to like the trap opium music, right? Like the I hate my life. Like you can see that in the hoods. You can see it's bare. It's burdened and bare. And it's like you have to think about the communities that those people and these kids are making for themselves to sustain. That is punk culture.
Yeah.
But it's being negated as such because it's niggas. And it's being negated as such because it's not marketable. And what's more marketable? White people doing shit.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think about, I don't know, because like, even we were doing like a what is Black anarchism episode, and I was kind of talking about how I feel like I found anti-authoritarian kind of ideas or feelings before I found like punk shows and the music, and so in what you're saying, I feel like I feel and detect a lot of that, because it was like in middle school I was best friends with a dude that only read Naruto and Death Note and could only talk about that. And then in high school I was friends with all the bisexuals who also were really into Suicide Silence, and even though I was a square. And so it's just like, I don't know, so it's like I feel a lot of what you're saying.
I mean, and then also to speak on like Black anarchism, I oftentimes was associated with people who would be rah anarchy, but would not include Blackness in it. And it's like, how radical is your space if you don't have Black people in there? And then how radical is your space if you don't have Black queer people, Black queer trans people there? You know? And it's a thing that I will always see as this like cognitive dissonance. There's a dissonance. There's no rhythm in this thing, and not to like shit on James Spooner, right? I think he did a good thing by creating this movie, right? I think he did a good thing to speak something out into the omniverse and say, hey, I'm going to create a space for Black punks to like thrive and express themselves. And then there's a whole festival comes out of it. And, you know, like I am proud of that man for doing so. Yeah. However, I think a lot of that work stemmed from this like cultivation and love for expression in a predominantly white space. You know, and I think that was the disconnect when you then, yes, you see yourself as being like someone who is experiencing microaggressions, yes, but you are also a very light-skinned passing Black man in this punk space who have you got to experience a lot of that because of that. You know, so it was like, let's break it down. We was in the DMs trying to talk about it. I was like, I don't want to give you no tea. Unless you want to put me in the writing credits for your next movie.
Yep. I mean, one thing I feel with Afropessimism is that it's something that's largely understood but not named.
Mm-hmm.
And especially because I think it, as a named entity, is kind of academic. I mean, the amount of times I went through, I mean, we talked about this on our last Afropessimism episode, which is how many times I like kind of, I read a sentence that was half a page and broke out laughing and was just like, this is hilarious. This is kind of dense, but it's also spitting facts. And it like should be studied, should be read, and that's how a lot of books are and could be. But I feel like the idea is more approachable than the things that folks reference it for. So I'm kind of curious, what did you see as an Afro-pessimist view in that film?
Well, I saw that even though Black folks thought that they had a safe space to be themselves, they realized quickly that classism changed the aspects of people's relationship. They saw that they really didn't have community and alliance with these white people. They quickly realized that. Real. You know, so it was like, wait, why didn't he? I'm surprised that that wasn't his answer when I asked him that, because it was one of the things that was pretty like fluent through the film. But there were also some Black people who were also very against the idea of being Black, and then also thinking that their Blackness was not a thing. They didn't care enough that their Blackness could be stripped away from them because they wasn't really connecting to their Blackness. It was like so deep. I was so upset, especially as like a Black trans woman who's come up in the punk scene, but has also been one of the blackest people in the space, in the room, you know? So it's like I really take that dearly because I know other black people who also have to take refuge in these emerging spaces. And I say that because there's a lot of knowledge that is obtained, you know, in a lot of these places where these no place places. The what do they call it? The undercommons, right? Like the undercommon are the folk who are literally doing the work to call out a thing, to try to name a thing, an oppressive and suppressive force, right? So it's like you see also the anti-establishment crew also kind of like resembling an energy that traces along the lines of like
There's that phrase like the barbarians of today are the tax collectors of tomorrow kind of vibe. Like,
yes, okay, yes, because of that, like
but finding refuge in the emerging spaces.
yes, and like, and I was gonna say that there's a knowledge that is obtained from that usually wants to get like snuffed out, you know, or that usually gets snuffed out by said oppressive forces, and sometimes those people look like you and me, you know. Some of these
First time I ever had wage theft was at my first black-owned vegan business.
yo, that's crazy. That is crazy. Not the vegan spot.
We love Columbus. We love the food industry.
Actually, we don't love the food industry. You know, like all of that is like, do you know, like two families go through and sift through all the food, the ingredients, and everything that we like, we eat. They look over all of that here in America. I found this out from one of the guys I used to like talk to. He like studies tomatoes. They're really cute.
Gosh, that's
You know
so
what I'm talking? What do you know?
No,
Okay.
I don't. But that used to be one of my goals. I remember I took one of the like.
He's so cute.
Oh my gosh.
He they pronoun, but yeah, they're so cute.
I remember I used to want to be a tomato farmer because I was like, if all else fails in my life, I'll study the genetics of tomatoes. And here I am, still kind of interested in it. Spill the tea.
I mean, I love tomatoes. Tomatoes are very queer. Do you know that? Like tomatoes can like make themselves. Hmm. It's really cute. The seeds and everything that they have inside of them can like produce. It's kind of like the idea. Like there's a lot of knowledge and books that have been lost through the dark times that express that like black women in the day could birth their own children.
It's official. Tomatoes are fruit.
You know what I mean?
Fruity as fuck.
Exactly. See. So actually, shout out. Like, I mean, we love food, but like,
yeah, no, the food system is fucked. I mean, there's so many things to address, but I mean, you came with an agenda.
How do y'all feel about people finding the will to say that this isn't their problem? Like, some of these issues aren't their issue.
I'm always curious how and when it comes up for people to say that, because I love it. Because there's like that same love when I hear some of my friends like, I deserve to be more selfish. And I agree that they do. Because I also know that there are multiple times where they won't say that something is their problem. And they'll be like, this is the human issue. And solidarity drives me to act in this way to sustain myself and others. And I do think that a lot of people actually don't do that enough. And maybe try, and I think this is a problem in America and just like where we are socially, is that sort of solidarity and mutual aid is contained and forced into family units, and it can't go outside, and anything, and then even that is a strained relationship, and people's called a tradition to have that sort of relationship. But I do think, yeah. What about you, Prince?
I think a lot of things in response to that, but I guess I think about trauma. I think about how, and this is at least how I read it, like if I think of like black people and how we treat each other and treat ourselves, and I think when we have healed through more of our trauma, we're able to look up at the world with more. We have more capacity to empathize. Even if it isn't your problem, you could still engage with it or have thoughts around it or figure out how it relates to you. And of course, it depends on what the problem is. When I think problem, I think like, is it a collective problem? Is it like a community problem? Is it, what kind of problem is it? Because where it lands on the spectrum, I think kind of distinguishes it. Blackness and how much Black people have been through and how we can worry about ourselves. Have we even got out of this fucking hellscape loop? How hard we have to look forward if we even want to have the hope that we're going to survive, and how looking forward so much. I don't know. And I say trauma because it's like this past month, I feel like going through my grieving process, I find myself being a lot angrier than I want to be. And what do you do with that until it's over?
I think you got to really let that use you until it's over. And to then to give yourself the choice whether or not you want to forgive him or forget and move on. Because I think using that anger before forgiving anyone or anything is something that you can use to actually better yourself and make yourself stronger.
Prince here to take a break from this episode to talk about the fact that in this interview, what Moya is saying here about the power of anger, about moving through it rather than suppressing it, reminds me of one of the most powerful scenes in one of my favorite movies of all time, Moonlight. It's a scene that I actually sort of confronted in my own life only a week or so after we recorded this interview. In the scene in Moonlight, the main character Chiron, after years of swallowing his pain, finally confronts his parent. It's heavy. It's real. And it helps both Chiron and the viewer realize that in Chiron facing his anger, he begins to find something else on the other side, a different way forward. Here's the scene.
How you been?
I'm alright. I ain't sleeping.
Why not? And if you knew you
It's
cried.
bad dreaming.
Still? You ever thought about talking about it with somebody? I mean, maybe not even a counselor, maybe somebody like your mama. Yeah. Yeah, it sounds funny to me too. You talked to Teresa?
Yeah.
How's she doing?
Good.
Good.
When you go home,
Home? This is home. You know, I mean, they allow me to stay and work as long as I like. I figure might as well help other folks. Keep myself out of trouble.
That's good, Mama.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is too. I really do. So you still in them streets? You come all the way the hell to Georgia to have you falling in the same shit, Chiron. No. You gon' listen.
To who, Ma? Huh? To you? Really, though?
Please. Please. I messed up. I mean, I fucked it all the way up. I know that. But your heart ain't gotta be black like mine, baby. I love you, Chiron. I do. I love you, baby. I mean, you ain't gotta love me. Lord knows I did not have love for you when you needed it. I know that. So you ain't gotta love me. But you gonna know that I love you. You hear? You hear me, Sharon?
I hear you, Mama.
I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry.
Now back to the interview with Moya.
Give yourself space, grounding, and solitude. You know, I feel like they have told us like anger was such a bad thing, you know, and it's not. I think that would help us also see other avenues of coming to this, like, coming to like collective care after like conflict, right? Like I was telling someone that like my trust in people, which is very slim to none, is a thing that does keep me from like resolution conflict, like conflict resolution. I'm afraid to show up vulnerable in this space, and I mean I will always be honest. However, there's definitely a space in me that will preserve a lot of my own understandings to people please and or to, how do I say, not make the quick avenue, the quick direct, how do I say this? Like, I just want to be able to develop a praxis beyond suppression and oppression.
I think we live in like a social culture where it's more incentivized to not show up fully, and it's harder to be vulnerable or for that process to be a lot slower. Even though, because if we were all a little quicker with that process, we would be able to show more authenticity quicker and get to the root cause of things faster. Because
Well, I have another low key question under that because you hit something for me.
yeah,
Are y'all ready to stop being American or no?
legally, okay, so to be a gun owner in America, you can't renounce your U.S. citizenship.
That's true. Or they'll give it that 800. You know, you can do that, and also they'll give you like $800 a month to like be like an un-American citizen here. This dude I was dating who was in the military told me about this. Is like this right-wing grifter dude. I had to like cut him off.
I'm like, wait, what did he tell you?
He told me that you can literally sign away your citizenship, and America will give you an allowance to be here, but you just don't get to be a U.S. citizen.
Yeah, no, because then if I don't have any other citizenship, then they get to, because my thing is, I used to really want to be stateless until I realized that's how they hold you in Guantanamo Bay. Like, if you don't have any other sort of state to take you or anything, they don't send you to normal prison. That's how they got that one dude who now finally is out after 20 years. The one person, because no state would claim him, and they thought he was behind in some Al Qaeda stuff, and he was just there, and he's been tortured for the last 20 years.
Shout out to Asada.
Yeah, when can Asada come home?
I mean, I say that because it's like, are we really gonna be conflict avoidant then and just be like, what? You know? Like, are we gonna let Gaslight America soothe like the gas? I like a good gas station. I love the smell of fumes. But I'm not gonna like let Gaslight America tell me that this is gonna be This is
Yeah.
it is
And I think breaking through and like being more vulnerable, and I like because what you were saying about anger, it makes me think of this essay by Two Black about laundering black rage in America and how it gets laundered and subverted and co-opted, and how if like the ability to show up and then actually be able to use it and be honest with our rage and be more productive with it, therefore allows us to be more honest and productive with other emotions and not having it be too conflictual with the ones that it doesn't have to be. Like actually being able to have that space, because like we're not incentivized to show that rage, especially as black people. So being able to work through those, like that's what I'm saying, like what you were saying earlier, like that street culture, that is punk, but it's not really called punk.
I know reverends and preachers who would tell us that these gangs know more about building a system for ourselves than most people, most organizations, most people who go out there and say they're in the mud. And I believe that. As someone
working unregulated.
yeah,
I mean, I think it's something I was thinking a lot when I was writing my book and researching my family and all the men in my family who are in gangs, or my uncle who was an assassin, or all this legal shit they did. And I mean, I look at it in a lot of ways. I'm like, for a lot of the men that my dad knew, it's like that was their way to get to the US. That was their way to get an income. That was their way to break through the protocols of like the US immigration system and like start making income. And granted, I still always look at it through like a gendered lens, because I'm like, how many women were slinging drugs in those gangs, or like, I don't know, getting locked up and abandoning their families or whatever the fuck. It's been actually really healthy, like to your point, because I've kept asking myself, what the fuck are you holding on to? What are you holding on to? And I keep thinking of that Audre Lorde essay, Turning Silence into Language and Action, and how I've read it a couple of times, and I'm like, have I read it? And then and if I keep thinking about what am I holding on to, then I think if I can ask myself that question and I can feel that weight, it's something that's been holding me down. It's something that's been telling me, you're this kind of person, and this is how you show up in the world. And
yeah,
this is what you
being
can
black and
accept.
queer is so fab. I feel like those are like God's gift special keys to the girls and the folks who are here as like fallen angels to like try to, I don't know, be aware. I'm in my own fiction world right now with this, but it's like, and when you going back to what you said earlier, I do think that there is like this experience where we are coming to realize it was like, was Blackness ever included in Anarchy, right? Was it ever included in abolishing anything? You know, we got to think about people in like the 1840s who were trying to work against abolishing slavery, but then was like, wait, what about white labor? You know, where in that form, anarchy can't show up as like peace. It has to show up as something revolutionary otherwise, right?
And there's this quote, I don't remember who said it. I think it was Luigi Gallieni. I want no part of your war. I want no part of your peace. Revolution now. That's it. And it's like, yeah, that's where I'm like, that's what we need to move forward.
So yeah. So by the way, the person I was referencing, I think his name is like Herman Craig. He was a proto-socialist. He was one of the people who were on the team to like really abolish slavery. Like he did want to do this, but then it was like he went up against all these people, and then it was like, wait, I'm white. And then we got to think about white labor. These people aren't going to want to take care of no one's going to want to take care of the poison. You know, like who's going to do that? And it was like, damn.
And that's still how they're talking about labor now. Like,
So wait, get into it. So then how do we talk about like people honoring Luigi? Like all folks who honor Luigi don't honor universal health care, right? So I think then we have to talk about what health care could actually be. You know, we're talking about merging the ideas of like gender identity with, I don't know, with like things that some people just really can't grasp because they don't have the time and space to obtain a certain knowledge. Coming from the undercommons, right? The undercommon spaces, the no place spaces that are very socialist.
well, also that sort of education that is being actively fought out of public schools. An institution that's supposed to be just, okay, we all should have some basis knowledge. What do you mean we can't say pronouns in K through 12? I can't call her Miss Applebottom? I can't say Mr. Applejeans? Like, what do you... like, we can't talk about... It's just how... this is the social war and actual attrition that we're dealing with right now.
And right. And so as I mentioned before, yes, I am a Black trans woman, right? However, I don't want my fellow constituents, brothers and sisters, right, to get on platforms and start humanizing themselves for simply speaking out and calling a thing, right? I should not be attacked for saying there is an oppressive force. There is a thing here and calling the thing a thing, right? And I think if we're also speaking about healthcare and pronouns, there are a lot of people and trans people who voted for Trump who are like the right-wing grifters talking about how they care about children and the anatomy of children, right? And it's being used, like that propaganda was being used highly. It was even sent to me by like a guy I was dating, and I was like, word, are you serious? Do you think I would not actually care about this person who detransitioned, was paid by the Republican government to say that they wish they never transitioned?
Allegedly, according to statistics, only 1% of trans people in America are out.
I would like to say to those people, those right-wing grifter trainees and trainettes. Also, I guess a big up to Bruce Jenner, right? I guess we're going to call a thing. You know, because, you know, she's all about like, oh, I'm so excited. You hear, dog? I'm like, girl, he's clocking you. That man is going to call you a homeboy. You are Bruce. You are Bruce to that man. Stop playing. My sister in Christ. It's talking about the people who are going to big up Luigi, but not think about the ways in which I have to show up and the things I need to show up. You know, like if you are not someone whose like healthcare is a major part of their gender identity, I want y'all to shut the fuck up. Like, shut the fuck up. If all it took was for you to change your pronoun in your workspace, no shade, that I'm not excluding anyone and I'm not taking anyone's transness away from them. However, there has been a huge space given to people who want to lock people up for not calling them Z and Zer. That's not niggas. You know what I'm saying?
No, it's not. No, it's...
So if your healthcare isn't a major part of your gender identity, shut the fuck up. You know, especially if we're talking about what's needed for trans people in a time like this. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Because it's like the ways in which we now have to show up for each other, it's a big trust thing.
And that's how
And we have kids to raise. We have kids to raise. And we need things in order for that to happen.
We need things need to happen. And folks have current needs and the stressors are getting worse. And I think something to ground a conversation about futures and imagining what radical, truly transformative healthcare practices and community and grassroots efforts could be is looking at the times when the public healthcare or healthcare institutions have been taken over by communities and then implemented and still ran by those who have the knowledge to do healthcare, but then administered by community members who increase the capacity of the healthcare facility that the people running it before were not doing. Like, I'm primarily thinking of the Lincoln Hospital with the Young Lords taking it over and then them having more programs during and after than before the takeover, with on the ground, people on the ground being like, we're dying of, I believe, tuberculosis. This is what we're going to start adding. And those on the ground communities organizing for themselves and federating with other peoples that are organizing for themselves and being able to create and build institutions that actually serve us and are led, informed, and the decisions are made by people who are impacted and have been impacted by decisions of that institution. And that's just not the system we have now. But it's what we could build for. And it takes, like you said, it takes trust for us to be able to take our needs and give them to other people and allow other people to input on them. Because a lot of people want to, they want to do
I
too much.
understand why when I was coming up in being the bearded woman that I was, I can understand why certain things would probably gate kept from me. You know, I want us to still be able to have spaces to obtain and circulate this knowledge, right? And I've understood and know that our lives are very sacred. We aren't just we are ordinary people, but we're not like a trend. We're not a fleeting moment. You know what I mean? We're not just we are real people. We are lawyers. You know what I mean? We are doctors. We are teachers. We are parents. We are mentors. Yeah, like it's an important thing. Um, and we hold also just being queer and Black, what I was mentioning earlier, shout out to it because those are two big, heavy keys. And some people do not know how to open doors with
Yeah.
those.
I'm thinking about a lot of different things, but I'm thinking about like a few mornings ago, I was like crying to my mom and being like, I'm scared about my future and if I'm going to have kids and I want to be a dad. And then she was kind of trying to comfort me, but then she was also saying the things that parents do where it's like, oh, you could get like a salary job and then like you're going to need a house. But then one thing she mentioned, because I think she looks at my life and is like, you're not reaching for certain things economically. She said, I feel like you're wasting some time. And when she said that, I was kind of confused because I was thinking the fact that I'm alive, that I am wide awake, that I feel, that I'm angry, that I'm confused, that I'm doing all these things to be present in a world that tells me to just erase myself or whatever it is. And I think about the idea of wasting time. And then, like, to your point, with everything that's coming, the normal version of life that everyone tells us to live, to me, it's actually wasting a lot of fucking time. If the government isn't going to fucking save you or anyone else, or they're shipping people off into fucking camps, is how, like, our world is going to change. And I feel like to your question about like Luigi and people are about it, but they're not really. I both envision authoritarianism and all this shit getting worse, but it's also going to push certain pockets of people to really resist more. And that resistance is going to bring more anger. And in on a weird idea level, I think more people just have to be fucking confronted with the fact that you can't trust this shit. And it's collapsing right all around you. And you can either join the people trying to fucking help and help each other survive, or you can watch.
Trying to help each other survive is like a grace point we need to have with each other. Because I think especially as an anarchist, I think in the future, looking back on this moment, there will always be people saying people aren't doing enough. And it may be valid. Like, we're not organized into enough strike groups to take down every single fascist as soon as they try, or as soon as they are actually just trying to operate the current government that they have right now. So I guess technically we're not doing enough. Is that technically a solution? I don't know. On top of everything else that needs to be done and organized to have a decolonial revolution, there are other graces that we give each other to move forward and not just sit and stay stagnant. Or
That brings up a lot about how I feel about like my political knowledge, right? Used as a tool to then give me the time and space to again, curate an art space, right? Throw an event, throw events for C3, throw C3 events for nonprofit companies, right? I've been able to be blessed to give myself slow down time and say, what can I use that's around me right now from my highest good? We got to think about why some people aren't able to do that, you know? And that's another reason why I ask people, are y'all ready to stop being, are y'all ready to kind of give that up? Because when it's in the body,
yeah,
it's nothing no one can really actually tell you to do. The freedom that we need, we don't have the words for it. The English phonetic really makes sure we didn't have a space and time for that, you know? And shout out to Anif who taught me that it's a blessing to be able to have time slow down for you. When you've like sat down and meditated and done the work to like think about the care for how do you weaponize, how do you use your empathy as a weapon? How do you let the tears that you form when no one is watching, the tears that you form and like are held by like your ancestors or guardian angels turned into the sword that will cut the enemies of your like the neck of your enemies. Like when when you have space to do that and really mourn, there's power in mourning, there's power in grief, you know? My godmother told me that sometimes she was really strict about it, but she said sometimes the best revenge is actually crying over the things that people have done to you, letting it out. Like that is some of the sweetest revenge. You can sit there and relate to your body, say this thing has happened to me. So then you don't have to be a victim. You get to move on, you know? I want people to remain vigilant in that way because what do we need? We need that grace. We deserve we deserve a lot, and I think we owe each other everything in this now, like more than ever. And I think we have to tell people that. Some people like, oh, I didn't ask to be born, and like da 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 da. But babes, unless you're an NPC, honey, they are gonna tell you who you are and what to do if you can't do it for yourself. And people who are like us are the ones who are finding refuge in these emergent spaces. Like nightlife is an emergent space. There's certain knowledge that is obtained through like community in those spaces where community is not currency, it's not capitalism, it's action. When people see me, there is an action, there is an effect that happens in the back of those people's brains that goes, whoa, this can happen and this exists and it carries this energy. They might not know that I am knowledgeable of things, but I also hold a certain grace to myself that makes it go, whoa, who is she? You know? And that is for a reason. It's for a big reason. Because I could be just like any other supreme bitches and just be in the house and be with my little cauldron and keep
Yeah.
it a being. I'm a mother of the night.
Yeah. I mean, you're honestly speaking to my spirit because
The socials.
I'm fighting the winter blues. I'm fighting but I feel in what you're saying, like taking that time or fighting to build that space, and especially for like queer and trans people, having to fight for that interiority when you're young, when every single fucking thing in the world is telling you who you are, what you're supposed to be like, and how that's a constant process of like reaffirming that queer or radical or more militant way of showing up in the world of I think it's really powerful, to your point, when we tap into it, especially during times of crisis or resistance or just intimacy or vulnerability. And I feel like it's one of the many things. It doesn't come without a cost, but everything has a cost. I'd rather suffer in the particular ways that I do than be something else that I started being a long time ago and I never checked in on and never reshaped or changed my path or something. And so I feel like, how would you describe your radicalization process?
It happened the second time I got locked up. I realized I was in a room full of people who were like not supposed to be there. It didn't matter like what they really did. Ooh, I hate to sound corny. God wanted me to see this and move with that. Like move with like, I don't know, implement the movement of an ancestor of some sort. Like tap in. Because what you are viewing right now is nasty work, you know? Regardless of what I got locked up for, regardless of how many, and I think I was like locked up for 3 weeks. I was considered a flight risk because I had a warrant out for my arrest. I got locked up on a college campus, my college campus that I was attending, by security cops. Security cops detained us, but they were also able to run the night, they were able to run our 50s. And I was like, what? It was the spookiest. Yeah, that was the second time I got locked up. We don't need to talk about the first one because I'm a lady now. But I I met people in the field where I was locked up. Shout out, I guess, Jackson Pike or whatever. Just, the thing. But I was there for 3 weeks. Just there. I was a college student. I was missing class. I didn't tell a lot of people. I did. I mean, I did have to tell my advisor. Shout out to my advisor, though. My advisor was one of the people who got me my job to Cirque du Soleil because she understood my struggle.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, but like, big up to Artervine. Fuck Artervine. I was just gifted with this sight. And as I was seeing this thing, I heard a voice that was like, none of this needs to happen. And then coming out, I met more revolutionaries. I met people who were talking to me more about like amendments. And I was like getting into the work. And that's what got me in this, like, that's what got me into like activism. And that's what got me, into all of that. Literally coming out and being like, well, I met people that were in the field, out of the field, again in the field. But like, and I mean, like, I'm talking like a before and after. They'll be like, wait, yo. And we'll talk and we'll still speak. Cause like, I mean, I met people, and then when we were talking, I would, they would check us, and it would be like, what are you in here for? I was in for some petty shit, my warrant and whatever, da da da. And, the way I was speaking, obviously it was like, oh yeah, you in college, like, but it wasn't, I wasn't because I felt protected in a space. It was that we were able to have a conversation, and we were actually able to articulate a praxis of like Black anarchy in captivation.
Okay.
And I think that was when it was like, whoa, this is definitely like a process of what revolution needs to look and feel like, Because here I am, this queer person locked up with all these. And mind you, lunch that day, I saw 2 niggas get knocked out for not passing up their tray. Like, let's be real. But even with the beard, I gave around the way filet. They knew how to treat me like a queen.
Around the way filet.
Around the way filet, baby. This space where I got to see like, whoa, there is a multitude of systems, and there's definitely multitudes of care that we need to get out of this shit. Because they're playing a big game on all of our tops, regardless of race. And I guess we're gonna see that now. These people gagging, white people gag.
I mean, I've been saying this for a while. Leftists ain't starting a revolution. Y'all, we gotta survive collapse. We gotta survive the dissolution of America and not even carve out, but hold on to the relationships that are sustaining us now and build decolonial revolutionary ones. Hey, listeners. This is The Dugout, and we're all about sharing Black radical history and ideas to spark learning and action. If you've gained something from these conversations, you might want to consider supporting us on the Patreon. Your support helps us cover production costs, bringing on amazing guests, and creates resources for deeper education. Plus, you'll get early access to the interviews and exclusive reading episodes. Head to patreon.com/thedugoutpod and join to keep this work going.
And, to go back to these intimate spaces, we have to really learn what the care is. The grace is important. But we also have to care for like the elder spaces before us, regardless of the generationalism, because I know that is a thing that gets in our way.
What do you mean by the generationalism? How do you see that showing up?
There are still like Black Democrats who are like, and the Black Christians who don't necessarily have a space or see it for a particular type of people. And if so, it's been very fake, and not to harp on Christianity too much, I'm a Christian witch myself. However, I know what it's like to be othered, but then also see these people not be accountable for the energies that they put out into the universe. Like, I've seen preachers speak out about killing in God's name. And it's like, yo, what? Excuse me? A lot of that stuff isn't fair to people who want to find safe spaces, but then are really understanding to what's going on in the world around them. again, being able to articulate the praxis of all of this. Yeah.
I mean, you're deeply embedded in a lot of creating physical and emotional spaces for folks to either convene, enjoy themselves. What do you feel like you, to be a part of creating that, feel like is essential or has to be there?
But I think there's a lot of a collective care that needs to go into that. I think there needs to be a lot of breaking down of like these isms and things. Like I was just in a car with a guy with teardrop tattoos who you would never think would want to just actually have a conversation about like music, right? We got to think about looking beyond the physical identities of some people, like how they show up, and really get into soul and the character of someone, right? We've all learned to struggle, and if you ever up to a certain age, you've understand karma in a certain way, right? The loop and hellscape that we are currently in. You've gotten to experience it now. You've gotten to also hopefully understand the ways in which you've reciprocated some of that energy.
But some people don't understand. Some people are just like, it's karma, it's magical, it's spiritual. I don't understand it. It just happens. And I'm like, it is, but it's also like you were saying, accountability. It's like you go and if you practice being unaccountable for so long and the shit just keeps smacking you back in the face and consequences keep coming out of the air, you're just like, that's gonna lead to a certain type of attitude. But like how do you feel like you can get to the level of recognizing that?
I think it's finding people who want to move in their highest good to live otherwise. So I think to go back to your question, like, what do you think it takes to cultivate these kind of spaces? I think it's like you putting your trust in community. There's other currencies other than the monetary currencies that you have to spend in order to make these things happen. That stuff's not easy. Some people just think like, I'm cute. I can post a selfie, tell people to show up at this address, and we have a party. It's not always that easy. There's competition. And even if it was just about that, and not about me and my talent, right? Not about me and being very strategic about the people I want to invite and bring into these spaces, right? Be sexy and silly and radicalize and revolutionize these spaces, especially Black people. It's important. And I want to find those people who are willing to express themselves underground or otherwise. I was blessed to be with folks in community who wanted to throw parties for people who couldn't express themselves out in the open. So what you are trade in the DL, come to this party and come kick it.
Yeah.
Like that. It was kind of like, if I don't want to say too much, but it was like if I could be the mother or madam of a community, how would I tend and care to this underground punk space?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Something revolutionary.
Taking it as it is and doing what has to be done.
Exactly.
I think there's something I've been kind of recognizing with a lot of my community now, which is there's a lot of emotional labor and work to be done, especially in community. And it feels like a lot. And that's because it is in this regime. There's a lot more. And I think recognizing that it's not fair, it's not fair. It is oppressive. And there is more emotional labor than we should have to do to move through and hold those spaces. And that's what makes it stand out as well, I think, in those environments and in those spaces.
I agree. It's heavy work. So especially now since so many people are on their phones. I'm glad that some people are learning to divest from social media now. Even the Lyft driver I met, he was like, man, I need to get off of Facebook. I need to get off of my phone. And I love that we were engaging in conversation regardless if we were flirting or not. I love that we were talking about engaging in having personal conversations and trying to divest from the surveillance system, right? Because that's what this is now. We have to find something else to invest into. And I think a lot of that has to be done by like this. Like,
Yeah.
give me your hand. like this.
Just holding hands.
No, literally like a physical situation, like a being in spaces with people, being in new spaces that you've never been in before.
Yeah.
With like an open heart and an open mind, regardless of your religious background. You have to understand the world around you. I love Jesus too. Jesus, shout out to Yahweh. Yahweh told me, yo, look at the world around you. They gonna play on your love's life. The connection that you have to God in spirit, they gonna play on your top because they are conspiring against you. They will conspire against you.
Yeah.
And Jesus walked his cross.
Hey. So you're telling me all it takes is 12 people and we can conspire something that will last generations and inspire?
It's big, and I think we also have to come to terms with like we all don't know every fucking thing. And that there should be some beauty in that. But I'm not gonna sit with the nuance. No more nuance.
What do you mean?
I wrote this somewhere. But I feel like because I feel like I don't know. I feel like it's not sustaining. Like I feel like we can no longer continue to be the devil's advocate because I think it takes away from the strong point of an idea, right? When I tell people that trans rights are under attack, but that also means your rights are under attack, the nuance shouldn't be, well, I don't know what it means to be trans. I don't have time to get you to understand why you don't understand me. As I show up in front of you, it's been my life's work. So I can't get burnt out.
I think that's very important for people to understand is that you don't have to be the one extending an olive branch and teaching people. Somebody will. And if that's not you, don't do it. Don't sit with that nuance with people who aren't going to actually, like, you don't want to be the one to plant the seed if you're not a farmer. I'm not like,
But so many people do it. So many different type of people do it. Those who don't know the definition, don't know what that word means, do it. Like
how as an activist you can catch yourself way too in deep community with people who are way more invested in the state than they are your liberation.
Like I can't be on Zoom calls with people strong handling the conversation with their emotions and crying. Like, I'm sorry. I know that's not like the leftist thing to say. Like, oh, let's give this baby some space right now on the call. Do you need anything right now for these? We can give you need a minute? Like, it's like, no. Put them on mute. Put he, she, they, them on mute. We gotta, because we don't have time. I mean, we do and we don't. We do and we don't. Because we're not giving ourselves enough time for the grace. The algebraic expression, we all not reading it the same way. We all trying to find different reasons and how to solve the thing, but it's like we all are part of the missing puzzles. Like I have this concept of like God body concept that we all are part of this force. Like I like to tell also younger people, I tell this to, I'm like, so think if like God did have a body and God was a body, not in like a gender, but just a body. Like I'm the toe and you're like the pinky toe. I'm the toe and you're like the tendon to the ankle. And we're understanding how we mobilize as a unit, like how we work, the work that we have to do in order for us to like sustain this body.
Mm-hmm.
That.
Yeah.
And like it's a big thing for me. Yeah, my mom always told me that I need to do public speaking and shit because really a lot of this, I'm just a vessel and I try to get this understanding by, again, like just observing and letting spirit talk to me through like what I see.
How do you feel like you've come to realize that in your space here in Columbus with your projects that you're working through right now? Do you feel like that sort of community is growing, and what are some of the things that are coming out of that?
I definitely think it's growing, but it has been a challenge to sustain a lot of these DIY spaces. Because, I mean, though it can happen inside of a bar or whatever, a lot of it has mostly been done in the undercommons. Those who cultivate the undercommons and don't even know it, right? These subcultures of community that are obtaining like a specific type of knowledge. And I think like there's a live action in those spaces. Like you see community in action in a lot of these emergent spaces. I don't know if that answers your question fully, but I think that's what I want to bring out of that question is that we really do need to give honor to a lot of those like subculture spaces that oftentimes, yes, don't have like the words to say what they need, but like some of us do, you know? Well, let me ask you real quick. What do you think it means to create a community that is safe for Black women, like Black trans women specifically?
Mm, I think about there's this info shop in Arizona, this indigenous anarchist info shop called the Talahugan Info Shop, and their model is we're not a safe space, we're a threatening space to those who want to harm those in community with us, and that and we're all accountable for being threatening to that harm, and that's the promise of being in that space. And I think being able to foster that, because I do want to like thinking about how to engage with folks that I'm talking to that are in more like inexplicitly political communities or in spaces and folks like that.
I was just gonna, okay, that's good because I was just gonna ask or say that I think we need to create these like material politics around like trans misogynoir, right? And we have to be very like aggressive and ruthless with our interrogation, you know? Like, because I think it means a lot, again, to be able to call a thing, regardless if we're right about the verbiage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cause I think that gets to the point of like we have to be taking action, and I mean this is I think why I think there was a little bit of a questioning of earlier when you were talking about nuance, because I was like I think that's the nuance of walking through this is we don't have to be critical of our actions, we have to be doing something, and to be critical of our actions doesn't mean we have to completely stop everything we're doing, but it does mean that we're willing to radically change how we're functioning. And that means operating in a flexible way in the beginning. And sometimes if you're not operating in that flexible way or operating in that way that allows for such change, that does mean big changes, big pauses. But that's a time investment, a community investment in creating something new.
Do you think our government is now officially, like everyone, is now unfit to be in position of power that they are currently in?
Yeah. I think that's been true for 400 years. That's my personal opinion. But from a more like historical point of view, there was like in the early 20th century or 19th century a law to make all of the House of Congress capped, so that there was no longer, because it used to be like you had to have a certain amount of people on the ground in your district, and then that was one representative in the House, and then that got capped so that we only have like 535 now, and then but the number of people that person's supposed to represent keeps growing and growing. So even this American illusion of a democratic republic has been broken. It's not even true. And I have as someone who's way more into like anarchist and consensus methods of decision making, I also think that in way more directly democratic ways of governing, I think our version and our ideals of republicanism that both the Democrats and Republicans love, of like their federal structure, is whack. Not federal enough for me. When I was really young, I used to really think I was like, if there's one thing I could do, like this was my like mindset of like revolution's never gonna happen, but the one reform is if we could like abolish the presidency. And now I'm like, oh, we can just do more. Like we can just demand more. And I can also live in a different system in my day to day. I can get my food, my clothes from completely different places. I can have relationships and get the care I need from different institutions and move through them in different ways that is hopefully building towards something else. Yeah. Wait, well, what about you? Those.
Oh, I mean, wait, to what parts specifically?
Well, I wanted to say for the first one you asked, but it already left.
I mean, I guess to answer the question, I think we do need to be very, like, clear. You know, I think a lot of people make fun of Afro-pessimists because of that, you know? And I don't care, like, however you read us, I think we are literally giving y'all the alphabet, you know? We are literally giving you, we are the ones letting you know that, like, the wizard has no power. The wizard doesn't know how to use magic, y'all. It's us. And regardless if the movie has been out or not, you know, shout out to the Wiz. But like, I think we have to realize that, like, we are bigger than them. But in order to do that, we really need to kind of like break these things down. We need to learn how to break down why we have to deconstruct an imperialist fascist like regime, right? Like why that oppressive force is there and why it exists and why is genocide why has genocide been a thing on top of the slavery, on top of colonization, and why has that not also been called the same thing? Why don't missionaries also get included in the work of genocidal maniacs?
You're a civilizing factor. I don't know what you're talking about.
You know, so why it's so we really do need to break down. Shout out to Michael Jackson, why they really don't give a fuck about us. Why are we continuing to condition the conscripts given to us by these people who are telling us these things? Why is it that you beautiful Black man who I know probably wouldn't open a door for me in public, flirting with me in your car as my Lyft driver? We got to break this down because we need to be together hand in hand in the freedom that we need. Not because we could be attracted to one another, but because we need to share this love in public spaces, which is the actual care, grace, and sovereignty we are giving one another. It doesn't always need to be plastic off the sofa. Shout out Beyonce, I guess. I don't know how this is going to read 4 years later. But,
yeah, I mean, because that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. I gotta breathe the same air as some of these people. We have the same water source, and we should have a better way of fucking managing it than the way we have this shit right now. And that's just basics. And if that was basics, we'd be in a completely different system. But right now, basics is profit. Basics is extract. And the one thing that I think a lot of capitalist logic, and why it's so and I mean, it's only been around 400 years. We've been around longer. I think it's got such a root is because it works off incentives, and so do humans.
yeah.
So
A consensus that I feel like is going to be digested by AI and then used against us. It's like, oh, y'all care more about apps than actual humans? Okay, that's crazy. Not to be a conspiracy theorist, but yo, we need to be conspiracy theorists out here too.
Trump just released all AI restrictions that Biden put into place. Signed 8 bills into office. First couple time he was in. He was supposed to sign some MLK office thing, but then they rushed everybody out. I don't even know what's fucking MLK bill.
Back from hanging out with your mans in China and shit. That's funny. And what happened when SARS outbreak happened in China and then we saw the height of surveillance systems and cameras doing facial recognition in the streets? Under the streetlights in China, in communist China? Oh, never mind. Am I saying too much?
Oh,
okay.
One of my favorite memes that's come out of this whole TikTok going away and folks moving to Red Note is it's like Americans, people from the Fire Nation, downloading a Bossing Say app, an Earth Nation app, and being like, wow, their groceries are cheaper. Wow, there really is no war in Bossing Say. And I'm like, it's the perfect corollary. Like, it's the same shit that would happen. I love metaphors through Avatar: The Last Airbender. I feel like they just hit so well. Like when Kamala was like, "There is no genocide. There is no war in Ba Sing Se.
Insane. Insane.
There is no wars, conflict. No, there is no genocide. It's a war." Did Trump not literally start the TikTok ban rhetoric and now he saved it? Are we not being manipulated? The state is abusive. How many therapists need to come out and tell us the state is manipulative? Right. Frantz Fanon told us how the state manipulates and how that affects populations on the day-to-day. And what material action needs to be done so that we can disrupt that cycle.
Yeah, you're right. Going back to the material politics needed in order to, interrogate these systems. It has to happen.
And it has to happen, like you were saying, materially, like cultivating these actual spaces. Yeah. I think about the work within the Belly, the Abolitionist magazine. Folks should all check it out. A big beauty in it is I'll be talking to folks inside, and it's an organizing tool. Like, no matter what sort of disunity, art, literature, being able to have something to convene around, consume, and then talk about is something that is a unifying force in a place that is built to be disunifying, built to be separated, segregated, and that division to be a part of why they keep the system violent. It's like what they do at the border, a system of deterrence. Keep prisons terrible because people don't want to go there. You go to jail once, maybe you don't want to go back ever again. I mean, I've actually heard that from some people. They're like, "Oh, I went once and I'm never going back again." And I'm like, I went back once and I was like, damn, this is what I have to get used to.
I got my black guys in their class. But God was trying to tell me something, and I think I listened. I still act up and I cut up, but I think I listened. I think I'm still listening.
Yeah.
But to go, we also, I know I said this a few times before, the word praxis, but we do need to be able to articulate that to other people. Beyond race and beyond gender and gender expression. Because if not, we're just going to be like locked in and keep going through this like white hellscape. And I say white hellscape because niggas did not do this. Niggas, I mean, now get to participate. Let's not ignore that. But niggas did not invent this. This is all this white, this.
We get to push buttons on their killing machine.
I'm like, yo, wait, what do you mean by that?
Like, we get to be the legislators and the people who now work the machinery of their settler colonial genocidal institution of quote unquote progress. Which is one thing I want to keep bringing this up, is that the Black Panther Party is still, it was a part of, the one thing I will want to always resurrect. I mean, there's a lot of things to resurrect from the Black Panther Party, but to resurrect one thing is that as much as you want to say about the UN, they were trying to bring the UN in to have a vote for all Black Americans to be like, do y'all actually want to be here? Should the Republic of New Africa be a thing? And what would that look like? A whole convening. What would that actually look like? Like, that issue, I think, should not be let completely die off. And I don't think it will live through any legal or legislated or progress through any legal or legislative way for now. I mean, I don't see that path forward just because of the crisis of America. I mean,
yeah, the crisis of America, watching an idiot hail Nazi, hail Hitler, hail Nazi. I don't even understand the full of that. On the day of celebrating Martin Luther King Jr. I mean, but it kind of makes sense as a spiritual attack. The energy of this man we honor, someone who wanted to who did not like capitalism, instead wanted to use today to we need to disperse. We need to disperse wealth. We need to disperse knowledge. We need to be with one another. I think it's good work with the Black Panther Party is doing with the Rainbow Coalition.
Yeah.
Come on. This is the niggas that we are honoring.
Yeah.
And celebrating. So, but then, to have to look up on national television where children are also seeing this white man, Hail Hitler, do a Nazi gang sign on national television,
So I love that you mentioned it's a spiritual attack. Muhammad Abdul, come on the show, and they wrote this book about Islam and anarchism, and they talk about how revolution is always spiritual. Revolution is always religious.
Because again, it starts from within the body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's something I always want to recognize, even for folks that are listening that are like, they don't maybe feel themselves spiritual, that is like a field and in a field that folks are fighting for liberation on and through and within, and is a place of refuge that is under attack consistently by the state and is a part of, like I was talking earlier, we defined what is capitalism, what is the state a couple episodes ago. Terra nullius. The Pope said they are uncivilized, the land is empty.
Free Gaza.
We on the corner like Israelites.
Fuck. That shit is so crazy. Like, this shit is crazy.
But it wanted to make me ask a question to you. What is God? What is being spiritual to you?
I think it's however I've seen it through many venues. I think I've been given a gift to have a very polytheistic view on life. I think a lot of meeting of minds is spiritual and godlike. I feel like community and care is godlike, that looks like God to me, right? Like when I hate to, oh, no, I don't hate to say this. When I'm like DJing and I look up and I see the whole crowd, I've DJ'd to 2 people on the dance floor. I've DJ'd to 300 people on the dance floor. I've DJ'd to 3,000 people on a dance floor, well, in the woods. The thing I love is being able to look up and see humans or humanoids or, however you get down with categorizing us as you see us, right? Like move to their own metronome. And I'm like, yo, this is God. This looks like God to me. God exists. Like God is real. I see it when those who folks would never deem able to be in any sport, right? Move and mobilize their body through science and bravery. That looks like God to me, right? Like when I take my moan shots and take care of myself in the process and my HRT, and I look at myself in the mirror and I say, whoa, I am able. God is real, Like it shows up in, spirit shows up in so many ways with the help of my ancestors, right? And the help of the stories of like the elders and what my mom even tells me, I think my mom also, shout out to discernment, because like I loved being in church. And my mom knew that, but she also knew who she was raising. And she was like, I got to take her out of there. And she told me when we moved to North Carolina, she was like, I took you out of the church for a reason, and it's this. And not because I think it's a bad thing, but these people are not going to like you for this. And what started that conversation was me meeting my family in North Carolina for the first time. And we were dancing out in the garage. And I was doing like the butterfly a little too high. I was hitting the butterfly a little too high. And then had people going, And I mean, I'm cut by air. You can look at me and go, oh, be it or not, titties or not, you was gonna look at me and go, oh. It's in me, it's not on me. So I think it was something where my mom caught very young and was like, shit, I gotta find a space to hold her. And that was a struggle. Again, when I tell you my mom and I were the Ghetto Gilmore Girls, like that is for real.
And that reminds me of a lot of global indigenous practice, both in North America and in Africa, of naming processes.
Also, shout out to my mom, a Black woman. God.
God is a Black woman. And all of us.
Yeah.
But the cultural practice of naming, like years after someone is born, and like the imagining process of that, because they're like, oh well, how are we gonna name this person? We haven't met them yet. Like we have to move through the world with them and go through these things. And I think about that a lot when I heard what you were just saying.
I think I feel like God can also just show up in people and they don't, I feel like I love, like, I was once best friends with someone who was atheist.
Mhm.
But I always loved connecting their personal interests to spirituality.
It's important, I think.
I always loved connecting, and I would gag them all the time.
Yes.
And it was like my favorite thing to do. It wasn't because I was trying to, like, I wasn't trying to be like, God is a thing or it is this like judgmental force. I'm trying to get you to understand that they play on your top about where you come from. You can do all the iconography, all the ecology, all that stuff, and look up worlds, you know, in the whatever 2000 BC in agriculture, right? But like, there's some things that you would never really learn and experience because sometimes like it's above us. I just know that I have a connection to it and I'm not ashamed of it. And I'm not ashamed to say I understand that some people's understanding of what God is just been slavery and bondage.
Yeah.
And that is so unfair to us.
So you talked about how you bring spirituality, especially like in your personal relationships, talking to friends, and bringing people together and in that community and in that effervescent moment. How specifically do you feel like you can break down people's reliance on those spiritual institutions that are there for slavery, that are there to keep them enslaved philosophically, ethically, or materially?
I think we have I think to our core we have to give space to honor our ancestors, and I hate too. And I hate to sound like one of those woo-woo girls. However, we have to look at the mind and the bravery of Octavia Butler to literally write about our current times. And regardless if we just think she was smart enough to do this, baby, that was anointment. That was divine. That is something divine. You can't tell me that didn't come from you. You can't tell me otherwise.
My friend earlier he wrote me. He was like, "This feels dystopic," and I was like, "It is. Stay safe. Stay dangerous." like it is. This is dystopic. Like this is quite literally the plot of a dystopic novel.
Yeah. And even when you read like cyberpunk novels, there's always this spiritual connection to it. And I feel like some people who are also often atheists are also the people who just think like the technology age is like, hey.
That's their philosophical institution. That's their moralistic institution.
It's like it's currency, right? Access, right? They think like this thing that is fiscal, it's in front of them. So it's just like, wait, what? And I oftentimes read that, like when I shout out to 1984, shout out to Snow Chase, like I am one of those people who have seen through like cyberpunk novels and cyberpunk culture and reality that we have been in for quite some time. I mean, it's just surveillance systems everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? Monitoring how they can also capitalize off of, they're about to legalize sex work. And that's only going to be for a capital gain. You know what that's going to look like in the future, and who can do it? Who's going to do it and be able to have a platform to do it? So we got to think about how, yes, and again, dystopian this shit is. We got to think about how people looked into the future and saw that this shit was going to happen because you weren't willing to have an empathetic bone in your body and condition individualism. And you rather have been, quote unquote, an American when being, quote unquote, an American meant nothing to you specifically. It meant everything to these millionaires and gazillionaires.
Spit that.
It means everything to them. Your love for false idols and the fake stories. They love that. They love that for you, babes.
Yeah.
They love that for you, babes. Yeah.
We have our own mythology. The American pantheon, founding fathers, carved in stone. And even that was a spiritual attack. The carving of those fucking settlers' faces into a literal sacred site.
Yeah, we gotta get in. Yeah. And it's so much, I think we are living in times where we also now get to be a little bit more brave and honest about what our spiritual experiences are teaching us. My very own personal spiritual experiences and what I've seen the oppressive regime forces look like, especially after George Floyd. I saw demons in the sky. I said, this is spooky. I've seen some shit. And it's like I've been able to like really see what fuels this force. And I hate to be like, oh, this thing is demonic, right? However, it's definitely a very dark force fueled by something very sinister. Very, very evil. And we've all participated in it. We will all continue to participate in some form of it because it benefits them. It benefits them for us to extort one another and then try to play the game. Because they don't mind if we using TikTok and Instagram to make money off of one another.
The poor's division is the power.
We just can't talk real shit there.
The poor's division is the powerful's wealth. Like, it's...
Yeah. It's spooky.
And honestly, I think the way to like hold all the space for that and make that a foundation to inform something that is actually built on recognizing that as a viable truth, to be woven into the yarn and story and fabric of multiple other truths to build us this web of abundance, we have to be able to move forward in that. I think, I don't know, towards that imagery or towards that ability to seek that clarity.
That's true. I mean, we gotta see. Yeah, that's true. We can go on and on and on, but that is very true. And one more thing about the spiritual attack on all of us is that, like, we have to we have to learn what it means to like surrender to ourselves in order to give ourselves that grace, in order to make sure that we are available to giving what we deserve. Everyone, we owe each other everything. I think I've said this already, but we do. And I think you need to understand what that surrender feels like to get to that point. And I think my spirituality has also taught me that in rest and meditation, right? Having to clear all my thoughts and then also getting me to be accountable for all the shit that I've done in the past and been like, whoa, this shit is coming back to me. And I have to sit with this. I have to sit in that vinegar, right? And I mean, I understand why people go get baptisms. That shit is tragic. Shout out to, trauma. What Prince was talking about earlier. Trauma is definitely something that we have to process again over again if we want to truly build, because then we gotta, trust is a big issue. We don't want to gatekeep happiness from one another anymore. We shouldn't have to do that.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a process that they want us to do that. They want us to be like, oh, they'll continue to just, they'll do it for themselves and then we'll burn them out.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that aspect of we're doing the state's work for them. We're giving them all the information they need on social media. We're hustling each other out of success and happiness. But I think what you're cultivating and what brings me so much joy is like that alternative space to vocalize and be authentic.
Well, I mean, also shout out to like artistic integrity. Right? Like, shout out to people who want to use their talents for like revolution, because like I've learned that revolution is in the body, but what I do and how I show up has been like a reverence to my ancestors, right? A reverence to honoring God and waking up and being like, yo, thank you. Like, I don't have to have this whole morning prayer. I literally just look up beyond my ceiling if I can and say thank you. You know, because I woke up again after having maybe some of the scariest dreams of my life. You know, I woke up from it and was able to find solitude somewhere in the scary dream and wake up and be like, wow, thank you. I'm alive, right? I'm here.
Yeah.
5 things in my room, quick, you know?
Yeah.
Being an artist is crucial. You know, there's a reason why they were taking it out of schools. There's a reason why it's hard for actual artists to get funding for it now. Like, it's hard. It's really hard out here for artists, but I think we're still going to be vigilant. I'm going to forever remain vigilant.
Yeah.
I'm going to trust that as long as I remain open, right, and raw, that some of that will be received as currency for the community instead of something. I mean, eventually it does turn into capital, no shade. Like if I'm inviting people to a party, but 9 times out of 10, they're not just supporting me. They're supporting other artists. They're supporting an institution that, you know, mentors other people who want to produce and DJ and cultivate art spaces, right?
Yeah.
And you know, and primarily Black queer people, you know. And I think people know that too, when they invest into me, and I want to make that clear.
Yeah.
No,
Well, wrapping this up, how can people invest more in you? Where can they get to you? What are the projects you're doing here locally? And what the fuck is a class war collective?
oh my God. Okay, so Class War Collective is a label that kind of formulated. Shout out to Torin. It's myself, Stevie, Torin, and Twinkle. We decided to kind of come together. Oh, and also Ben and Drew, DJ Sincere. Shout out to y'all as well. We kind of just wanted to formulate space and have another pocket, you know? Like, I flourish with a collective. Like, if I want to get something done, I need people to help me through it. Like, I know I can't do everything myself. Um, so when Torin actually was like, yo, do you want to be part of this collective? Like, I feel like you're connected to a lot of people, you know, music, you're a music head. And also, like they said, even when I go to your social media, you are promoting art. Like it's like art, a selfie, some real shit, art, and it's all Black.
Yeah.
Like, you know, but I've been blessed to be around spaces where we were only investing in Black art. You know, when you were coming to see us, you were only seeing Black art. You know, that's changed a little bit now, and I'm still like personally, because now I'm with the new collective, Class War Collective, and we do want to like open it because this is a class war. We are living in a class war. We're living a spiritual warfare. The class warfare is also conditioned by the spiritual warfare. They have a hand-in-hand relationship, all conditioned by people who don't give a fuck about you. So it's like we wanted to continue to like make these spaces and work with like local businesses to throw events, you know, and have this sort of system where, yes, you will be getting paid. Also, the artists that we work with are getting paid. And you will also be funding us to have space to continue to do these things and do this, you know. I understand and know the benefits, the privilege of being an artist, especially now, like I I don't want to say well known, but like up and coming, right? Like I'm toured, I'm booked, you know? I know that there is a certain privilege that comes with these underground communities, right? The undercommon spaces, the no place spaces. I benefit from that. And I want other people who I know, like I said before, I'm going to have children. I have children. They're going to need their things. You know, and that's all I want. I want to be able to have a space that, you know, regardless if I'm in Columbus or not, shout out to Reg and Cameron Granger, regardless if I'm in Columbus or not, we are cultivating a space where people get to do the thing, and we are giving that space to other leaders in the community, the other pioneers in the community.
Yep.
Like, that's what I want. And if I don't have that for myself, I want to be able to condition that. Shout out to Skylab. I want to be able to do that, right? You know, we in my 10 years doing this is giving pioneer. And I think I was also hitting this crossroad where it was like I could be a person who just, you know, just benefits from being this enigma in the world, which is like not everyone can do this, right? Like being like a force of nature in the world, someone who was going to stand up for herself and do whatever she needed to do, not take what was given to me, take what I knew I needed, do what I knew I needed to do. You know, that's what my elders have taught me.
Yeah.
It's a big thing. It's a big heavy, it's a spiritual thing. It's a big thing. I hate to bring it back to that, but yeah.
It absolutely is.
And I think so you know, and Classwork Collective is definitely like built out of that because of the work that we do individually. Like Torin has a thing and they do like meditation camps and like they're just so dope. And like the way that they are really obsessed with music and sound is so beautiful. I love them. And Twinkle is someone who is like, I also met in activism, but also is an amazing journalist and also gets down in the field and like understands like how important subculture is and DIY spaces are and the people who take care of those things are. And Stevie, who gets to travel the world working with like art and artists, you know, and doing digital programming and digital art and like, you know, representing themselves, just them in their body and dancing and being with, like they're so connected to people like within the country in so many different states. I travel, get to be in so many different states. I think it was just like a perfect way for us to connect and then also be inspired by what's going on in the world and make sure that something stays in Ohio. A lot of things shout out to Scott Woods. I have also seen people forget who they are every 2-3 years. Scott Woods said that in a poem once.
Damn, that's real. I mean, I'd be remaking myself. I thought this shit would change when I was older. I'd be like, oh, every 3 years I could like look back at myself and be like, oh, that's the same. I'm like,
well, change is beautiful. Change is God, right? We have to trust that. However, we also then forget how to show up for our past selves in future spaces. Does that make sense?
yeah, I feel like it does.
We forget how to show up for the people who were once like us in our change. The new kids. We also have to participate and give space for them.
Yeah.
And that's why I love ballroom culture.
I love that. I love how you're saying that too, because it reminds me of something that like I try to hold to myself as someone who was kind of active in youth liberation organizing when I was a minor and like really wanted to hold that as an adult and be like, but how do I hold that? And being able to find a politic of being like, well, you give people the space to say whatever the fuck they want to say. Like it's in the process and not in the assumption that you know what they need or this is how it was for me, so this is how I'm gonna treat them now.
I was working with some people in the urban art space that were like, yo, Mom, we want you to like help us with this poetry ball. I was like, what? Okay. But I think it was more so outside of just DJing. I think it was just like wanting to make sure that they had all the energy they needed to come up with this beautiful idea, which was that in and out of the categories, there was also poetic being waxed. And that also added to like your score, whether you're going to get your 10s or get chopped. So it wasn't just about how you brought it. It was about your penmanship, like how you bringing it here, what's between your eyeballs. Because, you know, if that's kind, you get your 10.
Yo, authorship. It's all about it.
Yeah.
All about it. Yeah. Are there any other lovely information bits you want to drop on the audience?
I do have Venmo and Cash App, Classwork Collective. That is ClassWarCollective.
And we'll have that in the description.
Okay. And then also, if you want to also just support me directly, no shade, my cash tag is ASL Princess. You'll see a really cute photo of a Black woman with full luscious cheeks and pretty lips.
And you better follow her on Instagram because If ASL Princess is in your city and you miss the opportunity to go, did you know that a fairy dies?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh my God, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Heard that through the grapevine.
You gotta come through whenever I'm DJing so the fairies don't die.
Yeah, we need fairies for the revolution.
I'm looking for a space to have my own residency again. Um, but it's nice that I also get to like DJ and throw parties with like other people in the collective, but I want to throw my own residency soon. And it's going to be through Classware, but Classware Collective also has Hold an Hour where the students from our workshop, they throw an event. So they get to throw an event and we leave it all the time. We do a lot of the promo, we do some footwork, we try to get people to come, but they also have to understand that part of community when it comes to throwing an event. It's my DJ production workshop that I do out of 3 different spaces. We do it out of Rich Street Records. I'm gonna try to do it out of Cut Records and do a thing on Thursday, and that's like a nice house dance thing where we get the dancers and the students together so they can have that symbiotic relationship with sound. And then we're gonna do it at a church. Torrin has a connection and the keys to a church where we can also work, and I think we're gonna be there soon. So you can also support us so that we can pay the bills to be in those spaces as well. Because I was so gung ho and trying to just be like, what about community? You want to charge me to be in this? But if I'm using up someone's electricity and heat bill, because I was doing it completely free. Like I wasn't charging any of the 17 students that we have. I wasn't charging any of them, and my constituents is charging like $50 an hour. And it's no shade. It's no shade. Will I flip this maybe into some funding? I hope I can. And that's no shade either. I got to be transparent about that.
I mean, people move in different ways. I mean, that's something that I'm interested in as well. Is like, do you feel like with Classwork Collective you're able to engage in practicing and as artists like alternative ways of holding economics or holding your money and holding your resources, the space?
That's one of our biggest objectives is to make sure that we are conditioning like an artist economy.
Because sometimes people forget not even forget, but capitalism, it's hard to understand, but really for profit, extract, for profit, fuck everything else, fuck you, your mama, I don't care, I'm gonna piss in your grave, I don't know what grave, there's a mine under your grave, profit, extract.
I've gotten one grant, and through that, it was in Black trans arts, right? And it was for me to cultivate more artistic spaces for Black trans femmes. And in that, I have children. In that, I've been able to throw these events with other people, like outside of myself in my past collective. That has helped me tremendously, you know? Shout out to Dion, shout out to George, aka Negro Yokio. And I've been able to again, be an inspiration for people even outside of Columbus. Which I think is super dope. I hope that I can continue to do that. And that's again why DIY spaces are so important, and not just, Skylab. We need more spaces. We need multiple spaces. We need also very accessible spaces. So yeah, that's how you can support. Shout out to the Dugout. I had a really awesome time. I would love to come back.
We would absolutely love to have you back.
And yeah, y'all support the fam because they heavy in doing the work too. And make sure you come up to Andy F. Princess organizing classes. I haven't been to one yet, but I'm a go. I'm gonna learn how to actually organize in a different way. Because I think the way I'm used to doing it is not getting stagnant, but I want to switch it up a little bit. Yeah.
I feel that. I feel that. Well, get involved in the belly.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for giving us your wonderful time.
No problem.